Hello, welcome to today's Formations event, which is organised by Nottingham and Trent University's Postcolonial Studies Centre in partnership with the Bonington Gallery and our network on Dalit and Adivasi literature with its Open Borders series. My name is Nicole Thiara and I'm one of the co-directors of the centre, and I'm also one of the network conveners with my co-convener, Judith Misrahi-Barak. Judith must be on either side of me. So Judith and I have just organized the Kadal Fest series, and we're really excited, to move from one kind of large series to this Formations event, which is surely by far the most ambitious Formations event that we have ever attempted. We have altogether 10 participants, we have 8 speakers, so that's really very exciting indeed. And the title of today's event is the same title as the project to which I will introduce you shortly. So today's event is called Mapping a Vernacular Network of Ideas and Recovering the Ephemeral, Dalit Literature in Marathi and Bangla Little Magazines. And we are so grateful to all of today's speakers. We, as I said, we've never had so many people speak here before, and we feel really truly privileged and very grateful to you to have made time for this. And we're also very excited to learn more about this really ambitious and groundbreaking project that the two organizers of this event have started. So the two organizers are Dr. Jondhale Rahul Hiraman and Dr. Sayantan Mondal. And they will after my short introduction, we'll talk about the project, the conference that will happen next week, which is also truly exciting. And they will introduce the impressive lineup of speakers today. So, but before they introduce everyone else, we will introduce them. So first of all, there's Jondhale Rahul Hiraman, who was in one of our first network conferences. So it's very nice to kind of continue this working together with him. He received his doctorate now from IFLU, the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad, and he's currently assistant professor at GITAM. His doctoral research was on religious conversion and the Dalit experience, a study of the meaning of conversion among Neo-Buddhists. He's the recipient, I want to say, of a prestigious center for the study of developing societies in New Delhi and a doctoral fellowship, and received a doctoral fellowship for his research. He's been publishing widely in the area of Dalit Studies and Dalit Literature on issues such as caste, colonial intervention, Dalit identity and culture, etc. And he is working on the project with the same title as this event with Dr. Sayantan Mondal. And Dr. Sayantan Mondal is a graduate from the University of Hyderabad and also currently assistant professor in the Department of English at GITAM. His interest of research is in reading and print. He's done work on 19th century literature in Dalit studies and translation. He's been an Erasmus Mundus Fellow at the University of Oxford in 2015 and 16, and he's published widely on Dalit writing, including on the work of Manoranjan Vyapari. So we would very much like to thank Rahul and Sayantan for organizing this event, and Mr. Dhurjati Naska, Dr. Asit Biswas, Mrs. Urmila Pawar, Dr. Chandrakant, Patil, Professor Dilip Chavan, and Professor Sipra Mukherjee for speaking today. We are really grateful for you having made time in your busy schedule for today's event. I don't know, Judith, do you want to kind of say a few words before I'll tell everyone a little bit about the what's happening today, in what order?
Well, just a very few words, and very quickly, just how glad I am to be part of this, and also because it is reconnecting to the origins of the network. So at the time when we met Rahul particularly, and we had invited Urmila, so all these, it brings back, in fact, almost pre-COVID, years, and it goes back to 2014, 2016. So the first, funding. So it shows that the network is really doing its work and doing its job. So it's wonderful now to be able to look forward, to more projects. And I want to thank you, all of you, again.
Excellent. So as you will all now be just as excited as we are to hear and learn more about this project. Rahul and Sayantan will take over. We will disappear from you. And at the end, after roughly an hour, we will give you the chance to ask questions. So please, in the meantime, just put your answers in the YouTube chat or use the formations email address that you have also been given. So thank you very much. And thank you so much, Rahul, Sayantan. It's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Judith. So we, first of all, thank you for such generous introduction and actually making this pre-conference roundtable possible and providing us with a chance to speak about our project, talk to some of the people whom we have connected during our project, to whom we are looking forward to work further, know further, and about the vernacular periodicals, particularly from Bangla and Marathi context. Thanks to Bonington Gallery and Alex here, who is always at the background and helping us. Let me briefly talk about the project. So our project started with a research seed grant from our university, Geetham, in last year, April, mapping this world of vernacular periodicals, recovering the ephemeral. It started from a conversation between Rahul and I when we were sharing notes that how difficult it is to trace periodicals from 50s and 60s. So we tried thinking about a project, and finally we materialized it as in the form of a survey project, where we thought we could at least gather 10 titles, 10 periodicals, digitize them, and see how the exchange of ideas, if it's a network of ideas that we can trace between Bangla and Marathi. In that process, we must admit at this, we got overwhelming support, encouragement from a lot of people, countless people. And we are glad to have this program today with some of them here. We have covered almost 70s, 80s, 90s, and of course the first decade of 2000. That's the bulk of our collection right now, which we are going to submit in May. Approximately 27 periodicals that we have managed to collect. In most cases, all the issues. And we will be digitizing them. We are in the process. We are hopeful it will be open for public by July this year. So we have a plan for taking up a larger project because we see that there is a possibility of around 100 periodicals, both from Bangla and Marathi, which are very important and which needs digitization. And it's a time-sensitive matter. A lot of them are getting lost because of the weather and other reasons. So we hope that we will be able to take it forward. So Rahul, if you would like to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Sayantan. I think good evening and also good afternoon to all joining from different places. Let me also quickly thank Judith, Nicole, and the Bonington Gallery, Nottingham Trent University, for providing us this platform. I will briefly talk about the conference that we are organizing in the month of March, between 1st to 3rd of March 2023. This conference is actually a follow-up to the project that Dr. Sayantan and I are sort of doing. We are convening this conference, a 3-day national conference on vernacular periodicals and Dalit writing, production, circulation, and reception at our workplace, Geetham, Hyderabad, in the month of March. So this conference is envisioned in the form of a symposium involving 16 speakers across India who would share their experiences and expertise on periodicals in vernacular languages. Apart from these 16 speakers, some early career scholars are also joining our conference who have worked on periodicals and willing to sort of explore this field further. One of the major objectives of this conference is to bring together the scholars working on various vernacular Dalit periodicals and discuss the coming of Dalit literary world within these periodicals with a focus on debates, especially on Varna and Jati. Besides, through this conference, we also intend to understand and motivate the research on contemporary publishing industry, the market, and periodicals struggle to remain in circulation. So this is largely what we are expecting from this conference. Over to you, Sayantan.
Thank you, Rahul. I think I would like to introduce the panel from Bengal, and then I'd request you to do the same for Maharashtra. So we are very grateful to have today with us three eminent personalities who have contributed to the Dalit literary world of Bangla. Mr. Dhurjati Noshkar is a retired central government employee, an essayist, poet, novelist from South 24 Parganas of West Bengal. He has been involved in editing periodicals since the early 1970s. Some of these periodicals are Bangla Mati, Soil of Bengal, Dokhin Barashat Sahitya Patra, Dokhinapot, Shangbad, Baripur, Shangbad, Bharatiyo Pundro Samachar, Pundro Bandhav, to name a few. These periodicals, predominantly literary in nature, also published essays concerning the history of the community, the ethno-national concerns, the folk traditions of the Bondro communities. He's also a member of Bangla Dalit Sahitya Sangha, West Bengal Dalit Sahitya Sabha, and a founding member of the Dr. Bhushan Chandra Noshkar Archive. Welcome to you, sir. We have with us Professor Sipra Mukherjee. She teaches English at West Bengal State University. Her areas of interest are religion, caste, folklore, and orality. She has been a visiting fellow at the Department of English, University of Hyderabad, School of Cultural Texts and Records, Jadavpur University. She has received many national and international research and travel grants. For example, ICSSR research grants for the project on interpreting folklore, understanding relationship between folklore, religion, and caste in East India. Grant from University Grants Commission India on the project on faiths in the margins. Loose grant from Comparative Religion Program on religion and human security, negotiating the power of religious non-state actors. Research grant from University Grants Commissions on religion conversion in colonial Bengal, and also a number of travel grants from University of Lisbon, University of Bonn, University of Manchester. Besides her research on the intersection between caste and religion, she has been an avid translator. Some of her translated works are Autobiography of Dalit writer Manoranjan Bapari, Interrogating My Jondhale Life, and recently Under My Black Skin Flows a Red River, translations of Dalit writings from Bengal, which she co-edited along with Professor Devi Chatterjee. She's also a member of Ebong Ala, a voluntary non-profit society which works with youth to encourage critical thought. So thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and being with us here today. And we also have Dr. Asit Biswas, an associate professor of English in West Bengal Education Service. He's currently posted at PR Thakur Government College, Thakur Nagar, West Bengal. He's completed his PhD on the film adaptation of Western text in Bengali films from University of Gaurbanga. He has published many research papers, short stories, plays, and poems in Bangla. He is the co-editor of the book Shatobarsher Bangla Dalit Sahitya, Dalit Poems, Dalit Literary Horizon, and also translated Manohar Gundi Biswas' books Dalit Sahitya Dikbalar, Songs and Dialogues from Bengal in English translations, and 24 plays of Raju Das, Dalit Protest Unbridled. He has also published books, translations from Nakul Mollik's famous work, Khomane, as Pardon Not. So thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and being with us. We have been thrilled to read your recent translation of Aadhar Bill, also which has been published from Zuban. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Sayantan. Let me now introduce the Marathi panel. We have with us Dr. Chandrakant Patil, Urmila Pawar ma'am, and Professor Dilip Chavan. Beginning with Dr. Chandrakant Patil, he is a bilingual poet, translator, editor, critic, and a columnist. He is popularly known for his active engagement in the Little Magazine movement in Maharashtra during the 1960s and 70s. He acted as one of the editors and publishers of the highly discussed little magazine Vacha. Besides, he was also one of the founder members of Vacha Prakashan that published the first collection of avant-garde poets of Marathi, such as Balachandra Nemade, Manohar Oak, Satish Kalsekar, Dalit Chitre, and so on. Thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation and welcome to this event. Moving ahead, let me now introduce Urmila Pawar. Urmila Pawar is a widely known Indian writer. She has been active in the Dalit and feminist movements in India since her early life. She was associated with the Marathi Dalit feminist magazine called Ami Maitarni, which was published during the 1990s. Besides, she has been writing for various periodicals. Her autobiographical narrative, Aidan, which is translated into English as The View of My Life, remains even today the most popular, and it has been translated into other Indian languages like Hindi, Kannada, and Tamil. So welcome you, ma'am. Thanks for accepting our invitation and being here with us. Thank you. Let me now move on to Professor Dilip Chavan. Professor Dilip Chavan is an academic scholar and a professor of English at Swami Ramanand Tirth Marathwada University, Nanded, which is also my hometown. He writes in Marathi and has published 9 books on various contemporary social issues such as language, caste, class, imperialism, women education, etc. He also has a keen interest in translations from English to Marathi language. Currently, he is working on the Marathi translation of Brijranjan Mani's book, De-Brahmanizing History. Besides, he has been associated with the widely read fortnightly called Parivartanacha Vatsaru as its executive editor. So thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting the invitation and thank you for being here with us. I think after this, let us now move on to the next brief session where I will invite Dr. Chandrakant Patil sir and Urmila ma'am to respond to some of our questions. So let me begin with Patil sir. Let me invite him to share his views about the significance of periodicals. And while talking about the significance of periodicals, sir, if you can also jot down the history of these periodicals. So please share your views. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this very significant discussion on Dalit literature. Let me first, right at the beginning, let me clear that I was not a teacher or a scholar of any literature. Actually, I'm basically a poet and an editor, but that happened long back. I retired long back, some 20, 30 years back, as a teacher of botany and biochemistry. I was associated with a little magazine movement in Marathi. In fact, it wasn't a movement at the beginning. It just started showing our discontent about the established norms of literature and the established canon, etc. But gradually we could get a number of other friends. All of them came together and they started in a various way their discontent about the established norms of literature. It was basically related to literature. But later on, some of us were very conscious about the caste and the literature written by a particular group of the particular caste person, etc. I must mention that two major articles about the anti-establishment were by Ashok Shahane and Balchandra Nemade. Ashok Shahane was a very, is a very magnetic personality, and a number of young girls were associated with Ashok Shahane. I must mention the name of a friend of mine, Raja Dhale, who was very close to this particular movement, which later on became a movement. It, there's a long history of the little magazines in Marathi that starts with somewhere about 1960 with a journal published by Ashok Chahane. Only one issue of that was a Rahul. And later on, very significant work was done by Ashok and his friends to a little magazine, Ashok. Raja Dhale also established a number of little magazines, many little magazines. Particularly, we find that his attack on the established literature was socio-cultural, and later on, it also turned out to be a kind of a religious revolution against this particular movement, this established movement. Dhale's contribution is much more than any other person in this particular group of the writers. The second name I must mention is that of Namdev Dasar, who started much later, who started a journal, a little magazine known as Prof, that is a revolt. It is very interesting to note a cyclostyle journal published by Satish Kalsekar, named as and particularly I remember that our great short story writer Bhaburao Bagu also wrote certain poems. The poems were published in journal, means only, and later on some of his poems were published also by Namdev Dasar. Bhaburao Bagun once edited a lovely issue, a special issue on literature named Ami, which was assisted by Sipra and also Raja Dhale. I particularly remember one thing. Raja discovered a lecture of Dr. Ambedkar given in front of the prostitute, and that was rediscovered by Raja, and later on everybody came to know about that lecture. But Ami's contribution was such kind of the literary pieces which were talking about the anti-establishment as well as anti-culture. Right at the beginning, Dalit literature was considered to be, it was in fact in 60s, right, in 57 and 60s, 1957 and onwards, and in 60s, this literature was neglected by the mainstream, but later on they have to incorporate that. As far as the literature awareness is concerned, I must mention two streams apart from the little magazine. One is a group from Milinda Mahavidyalaya, Aurangabad. There was a principal Dr. Dr. M.N. Wankhede, who studied in Columbia University. He did his PhD, but he couldn't complete the PhD there because of his illness, and he had to come back. But his subject was in 50s, mid 50s. His subject was African American poetry, that is the Negro poetry. And he introduced the basic elements of the new canon of literature. He wrote some articles on that, and that gave inspiration to the young writers. That was the first thing. Later on, we find that there in Milinda Mahavidyalaya, Aurangabad, where the Wankhede was there, Gangadhar Pandavani started a journal, Asmita, which made the major contribution in the Dalit literature, and most of those writers, which became later public and well known, they started their writing in Asmita. The second was a group associated with the Siddhartha Mahavidyalaya, and Siddhartha Rajadhale and many others, his friends, J.V. Pawar and Arjun Dangle and a number of others, they were associated with that particular group of the Siddhartha Mahavidyalaya. And they started writing pamphlets and little articles, and then later on little magazines. So it is the little magazine movement, which was basically associated with literature, but later on turned out to be a very important inspiration for the writing of Dalit, coming from a large number of the fields from villages and others, and they got confidence of writing from these things. That's, I think, sufficient.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views. We will have a discussion about this, I think, towards the end of this event. Probably there would be questions. Now I invite Urmila Pawar ma'am to share her views. Ma'am, मी आता मराठीमध्ये बोलतो. मॅम, तुम्ही आपले व्ह्यूज शेअर करा. तुम्हाला काय वाटतं पिरियॉडिकल्सच्या महत्त्वाबद्दल, दलित पिरियॉडिकल्सच्या महत्त्वाबद्दल थोडंसं बोला, आणि बोलताना थोडीशी हिस्ट्री सुद्धा आम्हाला कळवा किंवा सांगा. हिस्ट्री बद्दल थोडंफार सांगा. थँक्यू.
दलित पिरियॉडिकल्स जे आहेत ती प्रामुख्याने त्याचे जो विचार आहे कोणत्या विचारावर सुरू झाली? माझा आवाज येतोय आपल्याला?
खूप बारीक येतोय मॅडम.
आता येतोय का?
आता
हा, तर ती पिरियॉडिकल जी आहेत ती कोणत्या बेसवर सुरू झाली, कोणत्या विचारावर सुरू झाली याचा जर आपण विचार केला तर डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकरांनी 1920ला जे मूकनायक सुरू केलं आणि ते जवळजवळ कन्वर्ट होत पुढे प्रबुद्ध भारत त्यांच्या निर्वाणानंतरही 1961 पर्यंत राहिलं. आणि त्याच्यातून जे विचार आले ते विचार, तसंच गोपाळबाबा वळणकरांनी सुद्धा विटाळ विध्वंस सुरू केलं होतं एक पिरियॉडिकल. तोखामेळा नावाचं किसन फागोजी बंधू सोडे यांनी नागपूरवरून सुरू केलं होतं. शिजा कांबळे, शिवराम जानबा कांबळे यांनी सोमवंशी मित्र पुण्यावरून सुरू केलं होतं. दीनबंधू एक नागपूरवरून सुरू झालं होतं. अशी ही पिरियॉडिकल जी होती याच्यामधले जे विचार होते परिवर्तनवादी, तो या संपूर्ण अनियतकालिकांचा नियतकालिकांचा पाया आहे. ती एक बॅकग्राऊंड आहे. आताच आपण उल्लेख केला चंद्रकांत पाटील सरांनी की अस्मितादर्श. अस्मितादर्श मध्ये खऱ्या अर्थाने जास्तीत जास्त कथा, कविता, कादंबरी, स्तंभलेखन, लोकगीतं, पोवाडे, सर्व व्हेरियस टाईप ऑफ लिटरेचर त्या त्रैमासिकातून, ते त्रैमासिक होतं त्याच्यातून येत होतं. आणि त्यामुळे आम्हालाही तिथे लिहायला संधी मिळाली. लहान सुरुवात अगदी छोट्याशा लेखकापासून करून पुढे बरेच मोठे मोठे लेखकही तिथे घडले, वाढले आणि लिहू लागले. त्याचबरोबर त्यातूनच काही लेखकांनी मग लोकानुकंपा म्हणून मेश्राम, योगेंद्र मेश्रामांनी एक पिरियॉडिकल सुरू केलं आणि ते त्याच धर्तीवर होतं. त्याच्यातही कथा, कविता वगैरे येत होते. मला वाटतं इथपर्यंत भाषांतर होऊ शकेल.
हो मॅडम, नक्की. So what Urmila Pawar talks about while talking about the significance of Dalit periodicals, she goes back to Ambedkar and even before Ambedkar, where she talks about some of these periodicals like Vitar Vidwansak, which was started by Gopal Baba Valankar, who I think it was in 1888 or sometime then. So she is basically talking about that period, Ambedkar's time and also before Ambedkar's time. What were the magazines that could be called as the Dalit magazines, and what kind of writing was sprouting from those kinds of magazines. So it was sort of a base. Ambedkar's, some of the journals, newspapers. Before Ambedkar also there were certain magazine journals which paved the way for the magazines, especially in the 60s and after that. So she also talks about Asmita Darsh, where she says that whoever you see now as the established authors of the Dalit writings used to write in all these periodicals. So these periodicals gave some kind of a platform for the Dalit writers who later on became very prominent, very important, who were known on the larger literary world. So this is something very significant about the Dalit periodicals, especially in Marathi. So while talking about the contribution of Asmita Darsh, I think she also speaks about the other magazines, the role of other magazines. So I think we will continue with this. Ma'am, तुम्ही continue करा.
पण ह्या मासिकांमधून किंवा त्याच्यामध्ये जे साहित्य येत होतं त्या स्त्रिया थोडंसं देत होत्या. स्त्रियांचा म्हणून विचार किंवा त्यांना काय वाटतं हे आम्हाला त्याच्यातून जास्त सापडत नव्हतं. तर पुढे असं झालं की जेव्हा आम्ही इतिहास घडवला या पुस्तकासाठी मी आणि मीनाक्षी मुन्ने आंबेडकरी चळवळीतल्या स्त्रियांना आम्ही भेटलो, त्यांच्याशी बोललो, तेव्हा असं लक्षात आलं की त्या स्त्रियांना त्यांच्याकडे चांगली निर्मिती क्षमता आहे. म्हणजे त्या कविता चांगल्या करतायत, त्या कथा चांगल्या सांगतायत, त्या व्यवस्थित बोलतायत. तर मग आपण त्यांच्यासाठी म्हणून किंवा एक स्त्री मासिक का काढू नये असा आमच्या मनात विचार आला. आणि त्याच वेळेला संवादिनी नावाचं आम्ही एक संस्था काढली होती. दलित स्त्रियांच्या लेखनासाठी, त्यांना प्रोत्साहन मिळण्यासाठी. तर तोही आमचा विचार होता. मग आम्ही अक्षरशः स्त्रियांना गाठून भेटून त्यांना आमचा विचार सांगून मग आम्ही मैत्रिणीमध्ये स्त्रिया लिहू लागल्या. ते सुद्धा त्रैमासिकच होतं आणि ते 1990ला सुरू केलं होतं आणि स्त्रिया लिहू लागल्या त्याच्यामध्ये. त्यानंतर आता रमाई आहे. त्या रमाईमध्ये सुद्धा अगदी म्हणजे ज्या स्त्रिया 7वी 8वी शिकल्या त्या सुद्धा लिहू लागल्या, कविता करू लागल्या, बोलू लागल्या. रमाई मासिकातही चांगल्या पद्धतीने स्त्रिया लिहित आहेत. मुक्त मंथन नावाचा आत्ताच एक सुनंदा बोधिले यांनी सुरू केलेलं आहे. 3रं वर्ष आहे. पण त्याच्यातही स्त्रियांना संधी मिळावी, स्त्रियांचं साहित्य यावं अशा तऱ्हेचा जो विचार आहे तो त्याच्यातून आलेला आहे. आणि ह्या साहित्यामधून जसं कथा साहित्य किंवा कविता येत आहेत तसं संशोधनात्मक त्याच्यामध्ये बराच वाव आहे. म्हणजे मला एक त्याच्यामध्ये असं गाणं मिळालं लोकगीतांमध्ये की ती बाई म्हणते की बुद्धा रे बुद्धा तू अजापीड बुद्धा, बुद्धाला मोहरशा दिवट्या धरा हो, बुद्धाला आरती करावं. म्हणजे ती बुद्धाला इन्व्हाइट करते आणि म्हणजे हे गाणं कुठून आलं असेल लोकगीत, म्हणजे ते कुठे बुद्धिस्ट फिलॉसॉफीतून आलं किंवा काय, हा एक शोध घ्यायला एक त्याच्यातून वाव मिळतो.
Thank you, madam. I think I will very briefly and quickly try to translate this. So she is now, while talking about the periodicals, earlier periodicals, she now moves into talking about the periodicals ran by the female sort of writers. So she talks about Ami Maitirni. She was a part of this magazine. And then she also talks about one of the contemporary magazines called Ramai. And she she says that these magazines were quite popular during then, and Ramai is quite popular in the contemporary times, where women started writing, expressing in various platforms. She also makes a reference where she says that women who were sort of illiterate also started writing in these periodicals. So this was something very significant as far as the some of these periodicals, especially the women periodicals, are concerned. So she sort of brings in that kind of an idea. I think we should stop here with this question, and then we should move ahead with Sayantan. Thank you.
Rahul. Thank you, Rahul. আমি আমার প্রথম প্রশ্ন আমি ধুরজটি বাবুর কাছে যাচ্ছি। স্যার, আপনি আপনার সিস্টেম আনমিউট করতে পারেন। স্যার, আমি আপনার কাছ থেকে জানতে চাই প্রথমেই, যদি আপনি কিছু বলেন, পৌণ্ড কমিউনিটি, পৌণ্ড সমাজ এবং পৌণ্ড সমাজের যে বিস্তর পত্রপত্রিকার ইতিহাস আমরা শুনে আসছি রায়চরণ সর্দার মহাশয়ের সময় থেকে এখন অবধি, এই সম্বন্ধে যদি আপনি সংক্ষেপে আমাদের সবাইকে কিছু বলেন।
নমস্কার। পূর্ব ভারতের প্রত্যন্ত প্রদেশ পশ্চিমবঙ্গ, পশ্চিমবঙ্গের দলিত সমাজের মধ্যে সংখ্যাধিক্যে রাজবংশী, নমশূদ্র, পৌণ্ড, বাগদি, বাউরি প্রধানত এই কয়েকটি জাতির মধ্যে যে নবজাগরণ শুরু হয়েছিল, তার মধ্যে দলিত সাহিত্য রচনার ক্ষেত্রে পৌণ্ড, রাজবংশী এবং নমশূদ্র সমাজের নেতৃত্ব তখন থেকে ছিল, আজও আছে। এই পৌণ্ড বা পুণ্ড শব্দটা পূর্ব ভারতের প্রাগৈতিহাসিক যুগের 3000 বছর আগের আমরা এই পুণ্ড সমাজের পরিচয়টা পাচ্ছি ঐতেরেয় ব্রাহ্মণ গ্রন্থে। সেই পুণ্ড শব্দ থেকে পৌণ্ড শব্দটা এসেছে, পুণ্ডরিক এসেছে, পৌণ্ডিক এসেছে। দলিত সাহিত্য যখন দলিত সাহিত্য নামে যখন আমরা চিহ্নিত করেছি, তার আগে থেকে আমাদের পৌণ্ড সমাজের প্রথম সর্বোচ্চ শিক্ষিত মহাত্মা রায়চরণ সর্দার 1875 থেকে 1942 তার জীবনকাল। তিনি ডায়মন্ড হারবার কোর্টের লয়ার ছিলেন এবং তখন থেকে তিনি প্রথম ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় বান্ধব বলে একটা পত্রিকা প্রকাশ করলেন 1910 সালে, মাসিক। সেই পত্রিকা প্রকাশের মধ্য দিয়ে তার সুনির্দিষ্ট কতগুলো দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি ছিল এবং পরবর্তীকালে দেখেছি, তার সময় থেকে পরবর্তীকালে আজও পর্যন্ত দেখেছি পৌণ্ড সমাজের দলিত ম্যাগাজিনগুলো প্রকাশিত হয়ে চলেছে গত 100 বছর ধরে প্রাতিষ্ঠানিকভাবে। 1909 সালে রায়চরণ সর্দার মশাই তার পৌণ্ড সমাজের অনগ্রসরতা, শিক্ষাক্ষেত্রে অনগ্রসরতা এবং সংস্কার বিহীনতা তাকে পীড়াদিত বলে তিনি ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় সমিতি বলে একটা সমিতি তৈরি করলেন। ব্রাত্য মিনস দলিত, দলিত ক্ষত্রিয়। সেই সমিতির শক্তি বলে, সংঘ শক্তি বলে তিনি প্রকাশ করলেন ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় বান্ধব। ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় বান্ধবে তিনি পরিষ্কার বলেছেন যে আমি গ্রামে গ্রামে দলিত দরিদ্র পৌণ্ড সমাজের মধ্যে আমি শিক্ষা বিস্তারে প্রথম মনোনিবেশ করব, এবং পরে তিনি বললেন আমি সংস্কার মুক্ত করব সমাজকে। সংস্কার মুক্ত মানে তখন অল্প বয়সে বিবাহ প্রথা ছিল, পণ প্রথা ছিল, এই প্রথাগুলো দূর করার জন্য এবং তার ব্যক্তিগত জীবনে দক্ষিণ 24 পরগনা থেকে কলকাতার কলেজে পড়া এবং তার স্থানের যে সমস্যা ছিল, সেই জন্য তিনি কলকাতায় ছাত্রাবাস, শিক্ষার প্রসারে তিনি যেমন ছাত্রাবাস নির্মাণ করলেন এবং গ্রামে গ্রামে স্কুল তৈরি করলেন। সেই পত্রিকায় দায়বদ্ধতা থেকে তিনি ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় বান্ধব প্রকাশ করেছিলেন। তাঁরই অনুপ্রেরণায় পরবর্তীকালে দেখা গেল 1910 সালের পরে দেখা গেল তারই অনুপ্রেরণায় পত্রিকা প্রকাশিত হলো প্রতিজ্ঞা। প্রতিজ্ঞা মানে সমাজকে এগিয়ে নিয়ে যেতে হবে। সেই পত্রিকাটা তিনি তার উপরে লেখা হতো ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় পৌণ্ড্রক সমাজের মুখপত্র লেখা হতো। ব্রাত্য মানে তখন এই পৌণ্ডরা নিজেদের ব্রাত্য বা পতিত ক্ষত্রিয় বলে মনে করত, যেমন কুর্মী ক্ষত্রিয়, রাজবংশী ক্ষত্রিয়, এরকম অনেক অবদমিত জাতির মানুষেরা নিজেদেরকে ক্ষত্রিয় ব্যাখ্যা নিজেদেরকে অভিহিত করত। প্রতিজ্ঞা পত্রিকা সম্পাদনার দায়িত্বে তিনি আনলেন আরেকজন তার মতো বিএল পাস ভবসিন্ধু লস্কর মহাশয়কে। সেই পত্রিকার বেরোলো 1918 সালে। আর একটা সমস্যা রয়ে গেল যে পৌণ্ড সমাজের আলোকপ্রাপ্ত যে কজন মানুষকে আমরা পেয়েছি 1858 সাল থেকে, তার মধ্যে বেণীমাধব হালদার, শ্রীমন্ত লস্কর বিদ্যাভূষণ, রায়চরণ সর্দার, মনীন্দ্রনাথ মণ্ডল এবং ঐতিহাসিক মহেন্দ্রনাথ করণ, এরা সমাজকে এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য এই সমস্ত পত্রপত্রিকার মধ্য দিয়ে তারা তাদের যন্ত্রণার কথা, বেদনার কথা, তাদের সমাজ জাগরণের কথা এবং পোত জাতি অবিভক্ত বঙ্গে, পূর্ববঙ্গ, দক্ষিণবঙ্গ, উত্তরবঙ্গ, রাঢ়ঞ্চল জুড়ে তারা বিভিন্ন নামে পরিচিত ছিল একই জাতির মানুষেরা। কেউ পোত বলছে, কেউ পুণ্ড্র বলছে, কেউ পুঁড়ো বলছে, কেউ বলছে পণ্ডিক। এবং তাদের মধ্যে তখন উনি বললেন যে বৈবাহিক সম্পর্ক দিয়ে একে অপরের সমাজের সঙ্গে বিয়ে দিয়ে আমাদের একত্রিত করতে হবে, কেননা আমরা জানি আমাদের হিস্ট্রি, আর্কিওলজি, এথনোলজি এবং ইন্ডিয়ান এপিক মহাভারত, সেখানে দেখা যাচ্ছে এই পুণ্ডদের নাম উল্লেখিত আছে। তিনি বলেছিলেন যে সমগ্র বঙ্গদেশ জুড়ে যা বিচ্ছিন্নভাবে পুণ্ডরা আছে, আমাদের একত্রিত হতে হবে। এই যে সমাজ সংগঠনের দায়বদ্ধতা থেকে তারা এই পত্রিকাগুলো প্রকাশ করেছেন। শ্রীমন্ত বিদ্যাভূষণ এই সমাজের প্রথম এন্ট্রান্স পাস 1883 সালে পাশ করেছিলেন। তিনি মহাপণ্ডিত ছিলেন। তিনি যে পৌণ্ড সমাজের ইতিহাসটা এত বিস্তৃতভাবে লিখেছিলেন, সেই দপ্তরটা 1907 সালে তার মৃত্যুর পর সেটা চুরি হয়ে যায় এবং পরবর্তীকালে একজন কুম্ভিলক তার দপ্তরটা নিয়ে তিনি আর্য পৌণ্ড্রক নামে একটা পত্রিকা প্রকাশ করতে থাকেন 1919 সালে। রায়চরণ সর্দার গিয়ে বললেন, আপনি এই পত্রিকাটা প্রকাশ করছেন। তিনি সেই পত্রিকায় লিখেছেন, আমি 10 বছর ধরে এই পত্রিকায় যে লেখাগুলো আমার আছে, আমি একটা পত্রিকাটা চালিয়ে যেতে পারবো। শ্রীমন্ত বিদ্যাভূষণের পুরো দপ্তরটা তিনি হাতিয়ে নিয়ে এই কাজটা করেছিলেন। তারপর তিনি বললেন যে এটা তো শ্রীমন্ত বিদ্যাভূষণের লেখা, আপনি তার লেখাগুলো ধারাবাহিকভাবে, তিনি বলছেন আমি 10 বছর চালাতে পারি, আপনি চালান, কিন্তু কেন তার নামটাকে আপনি দিচ্ছেন না? এই বলার পরে সেই কুম্ভিলক তিনি এই পত্রিকাটা বন্ধ করে দিয়েছেন। পরবর্তীকালে আমরা দেখছি ব্রাত্য ক্ষত্রিয় কথাটা যখন সরকারি স্বীকৃত পাওয়ার মধ্যে আসছে না, তখন তারা নিজেদেরকে পৌণ্ড ক্ষত্রিয় পরিচয় দিয়ে পৌণ্ড ক্ষত্রিয় সমাচার বলে একটা পত্রিকা প্রকাশ করতে থাকলেন 1923 সালে। আমি আপাতত এইটুকু বলে শেষ করছি। ধন্যবাদ।
ধন্যবাদ স্যার। Thank you for pointing out the very interesting anecdotes from the Pondra community, one of the scheduled caste community of the Eastern India. among the Namashudra, Rajbamshi, Bauri, Bagdis, where we can trace the history of struggle towards awakening. Pondro is one of them, under the leadership of Raicharan Sardar and many other people such as Beni Madhav Haldar, Monindranath Mondal, Mohendranath Karan, Srimanto Vittanji. There were a number of periodicals of different frequencies. Some of them were fortnightly, some of them were monthly, started coming out from around 1910. Some of them are Bratto Khotriyo Bandhav, Pratigya, Aryo Pondro, Pondro Khotriyo Sambad. Samachar. Thank you for correcting me. Now, one of the thrust areas of these, to begin with, was the upliftment of the society, the community, so to speak. And most of them had a very clear relationship with a society that they formed. Most of them were mouthpieces of these bodies within the communities. They were mouthpieces of societies formed for the upliftment of the social reform to be done. So activities such as establishment of schools, building of hostels were going on at one hand, and such periodicals were also being edited.
Hostel in Calcutta for higher education. Thank you.
So thank you for pointing all this out, sir. And one of the things that I could find a very relatable thing that reminds me of the Nagvangsha anecdotes is an element of finding the history, even going back to 3,000 years, looking at the old texts, how Pondro community has looked back and tried to trace its identity in the ancient texts also, where they managed to locate their identity as the Buddhist community identity, traceable till 3,000 years from the ancient texts. So thank you, sir. I'll move on to Dr. Asit Biswas, and I'll pose the same question to you, sir. If you could share some of the very important journals, periodicals. I know you have been also part of the editorial board and in the capacity of editing some of them. So if you could kindly briefly share.
Good evening. Am I audible to all?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Let me start with a data. In West Bengal, in the government offices or in the government aided services, except in the post of sweepers, the scheduled caste people, the post reserved for scheduled caste, we find in those mainly three communities: Rajbangshis, Pondro Khatriyas, and Namashudras. Dhurjati has rightly pointed it out. I don't want to repeat it. Mainly three communities. These three. And interestingly, these three communities have three pioneers of Dalit Renaissance in Bengal. Mata Raicharan Sardar, among the Namashudras, Guruchand Thakur, and Rajbangshi, Rai Sahib Panchanan Burma. And these three pioneers of Renaissance, Dalit Renaissance in Bengal, initiated some periodicals. I have made a list of 60 periodicals. I should not mention the names. Let me name a few. Dhurjati has mentioned Bratto Khotriyo. I don't want to repeat it. In 1907, Namashudra Surid and 17 Namashudra Hitoishi, then Namashudra Patrika, then Ananta Bijoy. We know the name of Acharya Mohananda Haldar, the author of Guruchand Charit. In a meeting of Matua Mahasangha Odakanti, it was resolved that Ananta Vijay would be edited by Acharya Mahananda Halgar. Anyway, then there are many Dalit periodicals, but I have a question. I know it is not important to raise the question here. Are all the periodicals really Dalit periodicals? I don't think so. For example, suppose XYZ, whatever it may be, it claims to be Dalit periodical, but actually it is Rajbangshi periodical, it is Namashudra periodical, it is Pondra periodical. The problem is that, for example, in Chaturtha Dunya, it may be a criticism, but mainly the Namashudra people contribute here. And in North Bengal, there are some periodicals, and it is run by the Rajbangshi people. And probably no Namashudra people, Namashudra author contributed. And there are some periodicals, not purely Dalit periodicals. And it is a debate, I know. In some periodicals, some non-Dalit people can also write, but in some they can't. Should I mention the problems of the periodicals? To run the periodicals, the problems?
Sure, please.
Sure. There are many problems faced by the research scholars. Most of the journals are not preserved properly. And many of them, better, I should say, most of them are closed now and are irregular. And absence of next generation or new generation. It is not a place to find out the cause. It is the reality. The new generation do not take the responsibility of continuing the periodicals. It is a problem. For example, Odhikar, edited by Gauranga Biswas. Gauranga Biswas recently died, but there is nobody authorized to continue the journal. A difference of opinions of authors and editors. Sometimes there is difference of opinion, and the literary group, the group of the people, the editorial board is divided into two groups. And sometimes some people leave the group and initiate another periodical only for a short period. Then problems of circulation. Sometimes in individual initiative. For example, Patho Sanket. Narayan Biswas has been running it for probably more than 30 years. Individual initiative. But I don't know whether there is another person ready to take the responsibility. I should not utter the offensive word, but Narayan Biswas is not immortal. Anyway, then sometimes funding problem, because we don't get advertisement, sponsorship. Then another problem, I noticed it in case of research articles. Lack of adequate academic training in the editors or creative writers. Somebody may be a very good short story writer, very good poet. That does not mean he or she can be a good researcher or author of research paper. Sometimes the research papers are not research papers at all. They are simply personal essays. There is no in-text citation, no bibliography, etc. So lack of academic training. Then some Dalit academicians, they use the reservation facilities, but after getting a job, they consider themselves, or at least declare themselves to be elite. And they do not want to interact with any Dalit literary group. Sometimes they come to deliver lecture, but after the program is over, they forget, we should say, they want to forget their Dalit identity. They do not contribute to the Dalit periodicals. And simultaneously, another problem of the Dalit periodicals, exclusion of the non-Dalit academicians. Some of the people, the editors or the board of editors, do not accept the contribution from the non-Dalit contributors, and they do not allow them to occupy, quote unquote, occupy the position of editor or board of editors. Because the Dalit editors or creative writers have the fear, sometimes have the fear that the whole matter may be occupied by the non-Dalits. This is why sometimes they do not allow the non-Dalits to be the authority of decision making. Then, problem of being enlisted in UGC list, CAL list. We know there are many criteria to be CAL listed. Minimum 5 or 4 senior professors or academicians, website, etc. And the creative writers very often do not allow the faculty members to be in the board of editors, and so they do not get the facility of getting a CAL listed. And if it is not CAL listed, the young researchers won't contribute because they would get no API score. They have no OITs in job market.
Right.
So the research scholars do not contribute, do not submit any research paper to any purely Dalit periodical. What should they do? Anyway, then, so for example, Bangodarshan. All of you know the name Bangodarshan, a famous periodical, not Dalit periodical. Bankim Chandra. Anyway, in the Department of Bengali, at least some pieces from Bangodarshan are found on the syllabus, but Dalit periodicals are not included in the syllabus. And problem of translation in the Department of English. How can the professors include a purely Bengali periodical or Bengali article if it is not already translated? So problem of translation is also there. Then sometimes the problem of the government service holders. It is very quite natural. One who can edit, who has adequate knowledge to edit or run a periodical should be, or usually is in a government service or in a government aided service. But very often, any government officer cannot write anything without the permission of the department. I may be served a show cause notice if I publish something without the permission of my department. And as a result, there are sometimes, or very often, we find pseudonyms. For example, Anneshon. The periodical named Anneshon was edited or written by Dr. Atul Krishna Biswas, an IAS officer. But the official editor was Sipra Biswas. Sipra Biswas was actually Dr. Atul Biswas's wife. So here, pseudonym is used. He was an IAS officer, and he was the Vice Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Bihar. He could not use his own name.
Right, sir. Sir, I think we should move on to the other speakers and coming back to you again on this.
Okay.
Right. Actually, you have laid, this discussion to our next question, where we talk about not only the challenges of the periodicals, but the research possibilities in it. So I would now invite Professor Sipra to highlight some of the research possibilities and scope that we can think of when we see these periodicals as our primary sources. Over to you, Sipra. Am I audible to you?
Thank you, Sayantan, Rahul, Nicole, and Judith for organizing this. I'm honored to be on this panel today. The research possibilities, as all of us are aware, are huge. I will just highlight 2 points that I can think of. The first is, so what is the difference between books and periodicals? We have a number of books, Dalit literature also coming out, but books always take a longer time to materialize, whereas periodicals are often born out of a spontaneous kind of a response or reaction to something that is topical and very relevant for that time. Perhaps within a year or within a few months, the relevance of that incident dies out, or the emotions that were evoked by that incident also get gradually diluted, so that by the time the books come out, that incident will no longer be reflected. Yet the value of that incident, whether it led to some difference in policy or led to certain changes in history, whether it led to these or not, the value of that incident remains. And for this, we have to go to the periodicals which were born at that time. So this, I think, is one very, very great research possibility, where sometimes the term alternate history is used, where certain incidents which are very strong, which make a very strong impact, are reflected only in periodicals. They die out by the time the books come out or the books are published, because they don't last that long. One of the offshoots, I think, of researching periodicals would be that there are many writers who write in periodicals, writers who leave off writing within a year or two. Very often these are women, young women who write, who have the talent for writing, who have the fire in them, but once they are saddled with families, etc., the time for writing is no longer available to them. Not just women, but also young men who go into jobs. Very often in periodicals, you come across a number of names, very bright writings, but then later on, when we look for more writing from them, we no longer find it. And that is obviously because they have gone into jobs, are looking into, so busy with the domestic space that they have not been able to keep up writing. So a very good way of discovering them is through periodicals. I'm hoping that once researchers research through periodicals and connect with these names who have sort of removed themselves from that active arena of writing, that connect with the researchers may make it possible for these women or these youngsters who are now in jobs and very busy to retain touch and maybe to return to this writing which they were so much a part of. So this, I think, is the first point why periodical research is so valuable. The second point, I think, is activists. Activists don't have time to go through the lengthy procedure of bookmaking. Yet what they think, how they fight, the strategies that they use for negotiations, all of this come out when they write in the periodicals, a short article. And Dalit literature, of course, is something, as all of us know, which is more culture studies based, sociology based, rather than literature based, which makes the writings by the activists very, very valuable. And we can find them only in their periodicals. That is all for now.
Thank you, Sipra ma'am. So to the point. So over to you, Rahul.
Yeah. Thank you, Sipra ma'am. Thank you, Sayantan. I think I would like to now invite Professor Dilip Chavan to share his views about the possible research within the larger field of vernacular periodicals and more specifically the Dalit periodicals. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Yeah. in continuation with what Akshipra ma'am was trying to argue for, it is true that newspapers and periodicals are more lively connected with the masses than books, which somehow have certain limitations. If you look at the history of periodicals in Maharashtra, you will find almost all the periodicals were run by the activists who were actively involved in cultural and political movements. Now, there are some issues that we need to explore while undertaking this project. One is the genealogy of such periodicals, and where do you go back to? For example, if you look at Maharashtra, there is a very strong Ambedkarite Dalit movement, but then there was something called the Satyashodak non-Brahmin movement as some sort of say precedence to this. So there is a very fine research now uh, being done by some scholars who are trained in Marathi literature, and there is a wonderful book by Arun Shinde on Satyashodaki Patrakarita, where we come to know that there were around 60 periodicals run by the Satyashodak activists from across Maharashtra, and one of the periodicals was run from Karachi, now which is now in Pakistan. So, such a huge number of periodicals run by the activists who were not officially trained as editors or did not have formal education as such. For example, Dinamitra was a periodical which was run from a village in Ahmednagar for around 57 years. It was a weekly, and Mukundrao Patil, who was the editor, could not finish his schooling for some reasons. So these writers, I mean these editors, raised several issues, including the question of untouchability initially, and also genders, which somehow perhaps missed from as Urmila Tai was trying to make us aware of from the Little Magazine and also some of the Dalit periodicals. So genealogy is one thing that I think we should further explore. Another thing is the economy of the periodicals. I mean, if you look at the history of Maharashtra, we find right from the early 19th century, the Chitpavan Brahmins dominating the world of, say, periodicals for quite a long time. And then these Brahmins were taken over by the trading communities. In Maharashtra, all the leading newspapers and periodicals, mostly newspapers, were owned by the trading castes. So is the case with many other leading newspapers in India also. So how do we look at the? I mean, how do we look at periodicals both as a commodity, but also as part of consciousness industry, where we find the Indian businessmen taking some interest in that. And Robin Jeffrey, I think, is very wrongly taken it as as a revolution. I mean, when he wrote his India's newspaper revolution, where simply the growth of newspapers was seen as a revolution, something which is very wrong, because right from Jyotirao Phule, the Phule's prime complaint was that the dominant newspapers and periodicals in Maharashtra failed to recognize and acknowledge the voices of the marginalized. So the so-called spread of Indian newspapers and magazines also something that we need to take into consideration, though our focus would be on Dalit periodicals as such. So who owns newspapers for what purpose is something that matters a lot, because the anti-caste movement always looked at newspapers and periodicals as the prime, we can say, agency, or we can say vehicle of spread of ideas, something that the mainstream media failed to do. Another thing is something that was raised by the Bengali scholar, that why did these journals remain short-lived? Something that we need to really explore further. And how do we look at journalism as an intellectual means of production, particularly how is caste reproduced through the print media and now electronic media. So reproduction of caste by dominating this intellectual means of production in the print and also in some other form is something that we need to look into. Another thing is how do we look at say the intellectual debates in the regional languages. Sometimes the entire theoretical understanding of the question of caste remains premised on whatever that is available in English. Also, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar had to write in English, but then he also had to run several periodicals for some reasons. So how does say a scholar today look at a person like Ambedkar writing books and also editing periodicals? So writings in regional languages raised several issues, and while theorizing caste, while theorizing any kind of social change, we need to take cognizance of the writings in regional languages. And lastly, so far as Maharashtra is concerned, I would like to invite your attention to the left movement, which always was in sometimes dialogue with the Dalit movement, and sometimes there was a sort of say conflicting relationship between the two. So how are we going to look at, for example, two periodicals, one called Shramik Vichar, which was officially run by a party called Lal Nishan Party, that is Red Flag Party in Maharashtra, for around 11 years, and it was a periodical which refused to publish advertisements from any say capitalist say class as such, and the chief editor of this periodical was a Dalit. So he was both Ambedkarite and Marxist. So this could be one way of looking at it, as to how do we look at some different sorts of periodicals, such as say Shramik Vichar and Satyashodhak Marxwadi, which was an official organ of the Satyashodhak Communist Party. And this Satyashodhak Marxwadi remained very important journal for the debates which were so significant in the 80s and 90s. So I think these are some of the issues that we need to explore, I mean, while doing this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views on this. I think that we should move ahead, and you can probably go ahead with the other questions to the analysts.
I think, yeah, we have covered the primary two areas. Now, one of the other things that remains is the challenges of doing such research or even an archiving project of a larger scale. I think we also have touched upon them. All our speakers have talked about how irregular they were, which tells us like how difficult it will be to trace some of them. And so I think we have already touched upon them, and we can open it up for all and take the questions and maybe answer them.
Sure.
Can I speak about the challenges?
Please, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
आता दिलीप चव्हाण अतिशय चांगल्या पद्धतीने सगळं क्लिअर केलेलंच आहे. तर मलाही त्याच्यामध्ये आणखी दोन पिरियडिकल्सची भर घालावीशी वाटते. ते म्हणजे साठे मत हे अमरावतीवरून तायवाडे, त्याच्यामध्ये डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब
अण्णाभाऊ साठे मत
जागृती आणण्यासाठी त्यांनी ते मुद्दाम सुरू केलेलं असावं, इतकं ते क्लिअर त्यांचं ते पिरियडिकल होतं. आता ते सध्या बंद आहे, पण त्याच्यामध्ये मला मुद्दाम इन्सिस्ट करावं असं वाटतं की डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकरांना मातक समाजाच्या माणसाने पत्र पाठवून त्यांना खूप रागाने म्हणाला होता की तुम्ही आमचे नेते नाहीत, आमच्यासाठी काही करत नाही वगैरे, आणि फार रागावून पत्र लिहिलं होतं. आणि डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकरांनी त्याला तितक्याच शांतपणे त्याचे मुद्दे खोडून टाकले होते आणि उत्तर दिलं होतं. ते पत्र वाचून की आपल्या समाजामध्ये, मातंग समाजामध्ये एक जागृती आणावी असं वाटून ते पत्र ते पुन्हा पुन्हा रिपीट करत होते त्या साठे, अण्णाभाऊ साठे मतमध्ये. हे एक. दुसरं सद्धम्म पत्रिका म्हणून आनंद देवडेकर प्राध्यापक, त्यांचं सद्धम्म पत्रिका आहे की जे लोक आता बुद्धिस्ट झालेत त्यांना बुद्ध धम्म काय समजलाय त्यांना समजण्यासाठी मार्ग काय आहे, तर तो म्हणजे पिरियॉडिकल. आणि म्हणून त्यांनी ती सद्धम्म पत्रिका ही मासिक काढलं आणि त्याच्यामधून ते बुद्धिस्ट मंक आणि त्याच्याबद्दल त्यांचे आत्मकथन वगैरे, म्हणजे थेर यांची आत्मकथन ते देत होते, त्याच्यातून त्यांची माहिती देत होते. आणखी त्याचबरोबर रामायणातल्या कथा त्या ऍक्च्युअली बुद्धिस्ट कथांवरच कशा बेतलेल्या आहेत, कशा घेतलेल्या आहेत, म्हणजे रिसर्च मध्ये सुद्धा कशा तऱ्हेने प्रोग्रेस झाला पाहिजे याच्यावर त्यांनी फोकस केला होता. त्यामुळे तेही सद्धम्म पत्रिका हे मला फार महत्वपूर्ण वाटलं. हे दोन मगाशी माझ्या बोलण्यामध्ये राहून गेले होते, ते बोलायची संधी दिल्याबद्दल आभारी आहे.
Thank you, ma'am. Dilip sir, would you like to translate this? Because this is in connection with what you are also talking about. Sir, you are muted, I guess.
Madam made a mention of a couple of periodicals, particularly the one which was run by a person who belonged to the Matang community. And there has been a conflict in Maharashtra between, say, the Mahas who converted to Buddhism and Matangs. And this man wanted Matang Samaj, the Matang community, to follow Ambedkar, and for that he wrote a letter, and this letter was quite frequently republished in this periodical. Anna Bhau Sathe Mat. Anna Bhau Sathe Mat was the title of the periodical, and he wanted the Matang community to know more about Ambedkar and Buddhism. Another periodical which Madam mentioned is Saddhamma Patrika, which was run with a view of exploring how the Dalits who converted to Buddhism changed their lives and how did they uh, experience life after conversion. And then she also made a mention of how there were scholars who studied the Ramayana and some of the Buddhist scriptures, and how the Ramayana appropriated some of the stories which were popular in the Buddhist period. I think I could do a translation.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I guess we are running short of time, so maybe if all of us can share our views about the kind of challenges that we may have, pursuing such kind of a research. If the floor is open to all of us.
I am tempted to ask one question to our Marathi scholars here. In our discussion with Dhurjati Noshkar, and reading through those periodicals, I came to know about this huge repository of folk songs, particularly based on Sundarban, the folk traditions and all. And I have some very little familiarity with Ambedkar Jalsas. So I wanted to know whether those are also part of the periodical productions, those were documented. These are also oral traditions. And then if there are other oral traditions documented in the Marathi periodicals, the Dalit periodicals.
Right, yeah. Thank you, Sayantan. Thank you for this. I think I can also share the kind of challenges that we faced while carrying out this project that we were doing. So one of the first challenges that we witnessed was tracing the magazines, locating the magazines, tracing the magazines, reaching out to the people, calling several people in the process. I think I was in touch with Dilip Chavan sir, and I was trying to learn from him who are the people, where we can trace these magazines. And this is one of the major challenges, tracing and locating, especially the magazines that are 40-50 years old. So that was one of the challenges. Other challenge was, even if you trace and locate these magazines, you do not have any guarantee whether you will be able to procure those magazines or not, because sometimes people who have these magazines in their personal archives may not be willing very readily and willingly, be able to share with you. So that challenge was also there, meeting these people after tracing the contacts, meeting them, talking to them, making them understand that this is what we are probably trying to do, digitizing the magazines and also trying to, produce a narrative history of these magazines. So taking them into confidence for such kind of archival work was also one of the biggest challenge for us. There was no guarantee, but we were courageous enough to locate and meet these people and then request them to share these periodicals, these magazines with us. So that was also one of the major challenges. Then the other major challenge was while we were trying to locate, especially the libraries, government libraries, public libraries, and all of that, you don't always have people who can help you. Right? So you probably have to sort of get some mediator who could, channelize this process and then, make some kind of familiar contact with the librarians or with, other like private libraries also. I mean, that was also one of the challenges for us while conducting this kind of research. Chandan, would you like to add something more?
Yeah, I'll just keep my addition to 2 points. Going back to some, I think Dr. Asit Biswas was mentioning, and Dhurjati was also mentioning the institution affiliation at times or the lack of it with the periodicals. Now, it works in both ways. Even in case where we have seen institutional affiliations, these were not, big institutions. These were mostly what we see in Bengali, we call them shobhas, shomitis. So we see them forms of, group of people coming together and coming out with reform activities. Now, the lack of institutional support affected the regularity, the frequency with which they were maintained, and even reflected in the monetary financial crisis, which also got translated into the quality of paper that were used. Considering our field, Maharashtra and Bengal, very humid, hot, sultry, these are like very difficult even to imagine that we will get in a proper condition. If you're talking about 60 years old periodicals. So this kind of the institutional support or lack of it, translated into many kind of problems. The other problem that I would like to, or the challenge that I would like to point out is the time sensitivity. A lot of time, as you mentioned, these are in the personal archives, which we need to trace, which takes a lot of time. But a lot of editors are no more with us. Asit Biswas sir was talking about Gauranga Sarkar. We were fortunate to meet him in our first visit, and we were fortunate to collect the whole collection of Odhikar. But he's no more. Many such editors have passed away. So we are working with a lot of people who are 80 years old, holding on to these archives. So we do not know what will be the status of the archive, their personal archives, after a few years. So the project therefore becomes very urgent. And we also know a digitalization project takes a lot of technical finesse. It is a time-consuming affair, very time-consuming affair. So this time sensitivity and the time-consuming aspects, I think, is also a huge challenge for any project. And we are probably late a couple of decades, but better late than never, perhaps.
Thank you, Shantan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
One thing I would like to add is most of the periodicals were topical, and as such, we find that, as it has been mentioned by some speaker, that the book, when the books come, the significance of the periodicals is not is not at the center. One thing we must try as far as this particular periodicals is concerned is the Baroda Sansthan has the largest library, and that is uh, where if we try to go there and try to see, although as Sayantan has explained, it's a time-consuming thing, but perhaps we may get a lot of journals well preserved in the Baroda Sansthan, and Sayajirao was very much fond of this knowledge and the new knowledge as well as various issues. He's also one of the persons who was trying to uh, create awareness against this caste system and all other things. So it's better some such libraries like Baroda Sansthan and also many other sanstans are there, small sanstans in Maharashtra. If we try, we can get a lot of good magazines and better magazines from the periodicals in those periods. For an example, we find that in case of Ambedkar started 5 journals, 5 periodicals. But most of the journals were for the commoners, and they were written in the regional languages, as Chavan has, Professor Chavan has indicated. But we must also see that the oldest journal, in as far as we know, is that of Dinabandhu, started by Satyashodhak Samaj in 1877. So if we go, or you might have, Rahul might have tried, if we see, locate the person belonging to Satyashodhak, he may get some of the one must have told him about this Satyashodhak personalities who were involved in the movement of the Satyashodhak, and they are still there. They can help in pointing out the journals.
Definitely, sir. I think
are almost at the end of our session. We have 2 questions from our audience. One is, how is the relationship as far as the readers of the periodicals go? How is the reception? The periodicals and the readers. How is the reception and all? So as we have many editors, I throw this question open for you. And one more question I'll mention along with it. Are periodicals still important in today's world? So this floor is open for your responses. Please feel free to unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
I think the periodicals are still significant because the media, various media, now the people go for media, those media won't analyze the situations, various socio-cultural and other situations in greater detail. And periodical is perhaps the only way to get the detailed analysis and understanding of the issue. So they have a relevance. Still, there is a relevance. And as far as the readership is concerned, every periodical has its own relationship with the readers, or it has a specific area of the readers. So only the mainstream periodicals, they are actually filtered in the various strata of the readership. So better than these smaller periodicals or regional periodicals.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Dilip is trying to add something to it.
Yeah, quickly, I would like to bring your attention to some of the problems. One is the question of readership, which always was very small. I mean, if you look at the Satyashodhak journals, you will find it was primarily for the peasants, and they were illiterate, could not read. So finding a reader for these journals always was a problem. Even after the rise of Dalit movement and Ambedkarite, say, influence on the Dalit movement, this continued to be there. Readership was always a problem. It was somewhat an ethnic kind of readership, I mean, caste-based readership. And the non-Dalit and we can say, Bahujan readers really showed a little interest in all such significant attempts. I mean, 60 Satyashodhak periodicals, and Pantavne listed around 40 periodicals which were run by the Ambedkarite editors in Maharashtra in his book Ambedkar's journalism. So if you put together, there are around 90 periodicals run in Maharashtra, and they all suffered from this kind of readership crisis, which I think could be a very good area to explore as part of our research. And so far as the contemporary period is concerned, we all understand the decline in reading as a habit in the last 20 years or so. An Indian person reads 8 minutes a day. And this certainly has created several problems for those who are involved in editing periodicals for some kind of say commitment to social transformation and ideological intervention. For example, I am associated with two periodicals, and it is really difficult for us to sustain financially and also find new readers, though there are quite a large number of intellectuals coming from diverse caste backgrounds. But this refusal to be part of the wider social movement is a problem, and periodicals always have some kind of association with social movements. So the decline of social movements and fall of, we can say, this kind of intellectual consciousness have created major problems for the periodicals so far as the survival is concerned. Was I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I think sir was responding to this question on how the Dalit magazines or periodicals were received by the readers. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your observations on this. There is this one question I would like to answer this question very quickly, very briefly. I know we are running short of time, so I'll keep that in mind. So this question reads like, do periodicals continue to hold an important place in the literary world, or has the emphasis shifted to short story collections? Obviously, periodical hold a lot of importance in the literary world. As you are saying, the emphasis shifted to short story collections. I think periodicals have some limit in the sense that they cannot be of the book length, right? The audience also, whoever is the editor, he has to keep in mind the wider readership, as Chavan sir was also highlighting. So that is the major reason why you get to see more number of short stories being published in the periodicals rather than any other bigger version of the literary genre. Any other literary genre like novel or an autobiography. Autobiographical extracts are very much a part of the periodicals, but not the full volume autobiographical narrative. So definitely yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's over to Nicole and Judith now.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, all of you. I can't can't summarize this because you all had so much to say, and we feel like all of you had so much more to say. We only really scratched the surface, but it shows how important and urgent it is, to research in this field, but also to make sure that these journals survive. So thank you all so very much. Sayantan, Rahul, you have a massive project on your hands. And this is just about, in two sort of major vernacular languages, right? I mean, the picture kind of varies hugely all over India, but there's huge urgency, I think, to kind of make sure that these hugely important literary and historical documents are sort of kept for posterity. So, well, I wish you all the very, very best for the 3-day conference next week. I mean, clearly, I mean, I wished I could kind of be there and hear everything that you're going to kind of, all these ideas you're going to share. And I'm sure this is not the last thing that we will hear about this project. So thank you all so very, very much, you know, it's been really wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for your time and your knowledge. And thank you, Rahul and Sayantan, and good luck for next week. Thank you all very much. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot, Nicole, Judith, Bonington Gallery, and all the others, panelists, especially from Marathi and Bangla. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. We can close the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.